Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of NHLN Opinion Plus. This is a space for our opinions where we talk about current events and questions the Hispanic Latino community is curious about. Today's guest is no stranger to our program, Hershey Hirschkop, Executive Director of Seacoast Outright. Welcome back to the program, and thank you for joining us once again.
Thanks for having me, Hugo. It's great to be here.
For 28 years, Seacoast Outright has been one of the only resources available for LGBTQ plus youth in the Seacoast area. Through educational programs, annual Pride celebrations, and youth support groups, Seacoast Outright's mission has always been to create a safe space for youth to explore the topics of gender and sexuality in a welcoming and understanding environment. Above all else, Seacoast Outright strives to protect and foster community empathy and security. Let's start there. Has the work of Seacoast Outright become harder or easier these nearly 3 decades since the organization was founded?
Wow. Yes, and no. Easier and harder. I, of course, wasn't around in 1993 when we were founded, but there was a very deep unmet need. I think a lot of that has been met. I certainly know that in cities and in sort of blue parts of the state, including southern Maine and northern Massachusetts, where we also serve, we've seen progress, right? We've seen things be easier. There are GSAs, which are gender sexuality alliances, in schools that pop up everywhere. We've seen better training and better language. And also I've noticed among our kids, that a lot of our allies are a lot more relaxed about where everybody is at in terms of their gender identity, their sexual orientation, and other things that impact our kids. On the other hand, in rural parts of the state and still in some of the liberal enclaves, there's a lot of work to be done. So we've made progress, certainly, for many years. We've had an impact, but there's so much more we could be doing. So.
You know, my daughter is a bisexual woman. That's how she self-identifies. She's now 18 years old. She was 12 years old when she came out. I think overall, my wife and I created a safe home environment that facilitated Isabella to feel comfortable enough to share with us that she is bisexual. But as a heterosexual male who, while I have friends that are from the gay and lesbian community, I am, again, a heterosexual, and certainly my daughter is the first bisexual person that I know, at least that I know of. But as much as I try to support my daughter, I know I've made lots of mistakes along the way. And one of the things that I saw that you offer is the parent support groups among the services that you provide. Tell us a little bit about those services.
Sure. So we have a group that meets on the first Friday of every month. It's timed so that if you drop off your kids to our group, you get to parents group starts 15 minutes later and ends a little earlier. It's run by Christine Stillwell, is our board treasurer, and she actually facilitates the group with another volunteer. And, you know, it's been I know it's been very helpful for many parents and people who, I probably get one call a week from a parent looking for support and help, and we direct them to this group. And I want to say we also offer help on a one-to-one basis for parents who are really struggling. The idea of a group is really daunting to them. They're not ready to talk about this in public, perhaps. Many of the parents from that group are willing to get on the phone or an email or meet in person even and offer their own support and talk about their own stories with those people. So, you know, it's been great in that obviously helping parents get through this is important to kids feeling supported. And, you know, to make you feel better, Hugo, we all make mistakes, even people in the LGBTQ community, in terms of misgendering and tripping over language, and language is constantly changing. And I really believe that if everybody has a good heart, that, you know, those kind of mistakes are easy to say, no big deal, let's move on. It's really the ones where it's hateful, it's on purpose, I refuse to acknowledge who you are. And, you know, a lot of what the parents deal with, I think, in this group is not making those mistakes, right? It's talking about what can I do to support my child? And obviously, if they're at that group to begin with, they're really trying to do that, right? We see parents who are like you, trying to figure out, how do I best support my kid in wherever they are in their journey, their path, their identity. And, sometimes it means, getting used to using a different name and a different pronoun and asking, and that might change too, but it's just being there. That's a big step forward, I'd say. Just being at the meeting, that's huge.
Yes, I think being present is so important. Listening, and a willingness to learn. And I think that's really helped us be supportive of our daughter, and it's also helped us to continue to grow. Again, very admittingly, being very transparent, that as a heterosexual man, there's a lot that I don't understand, but I certainly want to learn. So thank you for that. And those are one of the services that I certainly was very interested in talking to you about. My daughter, Isabella, like many LGBTQ youth, has multiple experiences that intersect. She is bisexual. She's a bisexual Latina that uses the pronouns she and her. Since the last time you were on NHLN Opinion Plus, Seacoast Outright has revised its LGBTQIA plus cultural proficiency training for community organizations, schools, and businesses. Tell us about that pivot.
Sure. Well, part of the great thing that happened is we have a fabulous MSW intern from UNH who is basically our coordinator of that program. So it's like I have a staff person basically who is able to coordinate and do outreach and make connections and offer it. And at the same time, we've had a variety of new speakers who represent various segments of our community, and that's great. We want representation as much as we can. And, we've taken a look at it and just worked our way through what makes for the best presentation. I think definitely the idea of sort of connecting with people and telling your own personal stories like you have, thank you, Hugo, for sharing that, by the way, is really important. And so we focus a lot on a few key items. One is, sort of a general overview of who our community is and how you deal with the language around it and what the differences are between gender expression, gender identity, sexual orientation. But also we talk about intersectionality and also allyship, how you can help, what it means for you, how to talk to our community if you're a little worried about that. And a lot of people ask those questions. And our presenters also, originally it had a script they were reading, and we really felt like that wasn't, a good way to engage. So now they tell stories of their own experiences, and they're going to be different depending on the speaker you get. But I think that's made for a much, much better presentation for us, and has had a better impact on the people that we are trying to, get to understand our community.
Yeah, and there's no one size fits all, as you've mentioned, and it's important to kind of map it out. When we were talking to Isabella, one of the first things that we talked about was the need, when the time was right, and she needed to drive that, when the time was right to share with others her being bisexual. And it was a hard conversation for her first, right? She was very conscientious of the fact that we come from a culture that's could be at times, because of religion, conservative. And she was very concerned about creating rifts between family members. And that was really important, a crossroads for us, because it was important for us as parents to let her know that we appreciate her concern, but what was paramount, it was for her to be true to herself, regardless of whatever outcome that is. But because we had those conversations and we really started to plan what would come next, and what came next came 3 years later when she turned 15 and coming out to the family, we were able to map out conversations that I would have, that she would have, so that when we came to her quinceañera, the Sweet 15, yep, she could be her full self. And she was very conscious culturally that a quinceañera was a coming out from a girl to a woman. And she wanted to use that event where we would have family members around us for her to be her true self. I thought that was very poignant of her. And because we were facilitating conversations, when she did come out, it was surrounded with love and support from all members of our family, including our friends. And I thought that was key.
Wow,
And that intersectionality.
I wish every parent were like you. You have obviously done a really great job in how thoughtful and supportive you've been, and also letting her decide how she comes out, when she comes out. That's very important. And actually right now in New Hampshire, there's a fight in some places where, you know, kids go to their guidance counselor, they're dealing with all sorts of issues. Maybe they come out to them and they expect some level of confidentiality. And there's these demands by school committee members, by superintendents, by parents that guidance counselors call up parents and tell them this information. And it's just not theirs to tell, right? The guidance counselors are great. They know that they are not allowed to come out for our kids. That's a personal decision. Everybody gets to make it. There's always been a lot of discussion about, you know, are we allowed to out people who are not really champions, who we know are in the closet, but have worked against us? And, you know, the answer is no, we really don't. You know, that's a decision kids get to make. And it's great that you really understood that and respected that.
Thank you very much. And again, all credit to my daughter. I think she's certainly on the driver's seat, as she should be, when it comes to again in this particular instance, coming out to the rest of our family and others. One of the things that we talked about earlier, you mentioned earlier, but was about self-identification. Next week, Illinois Latino News, our sister news outlet in the Midwest, will be publishing a story by reporter Anabel Rocha about how companies are working on conscious consumerism beyond rainbow washing. One Finance, a financial institution with banking services in Illinois, has an initiative that displays someone's chosen name on their bank card, in their account, and during all communication. The bank does not require legal documentation of a name change, does not ask customers for their gender, and only uses gender-neutral language both internally and externally. Within a matter of months, One Finance was able to make it easy for customers to change their first name, no doctor's forms, no driver's license change required, just the opportunity to change their first name through a simple 3-question form. How important do you think is it to help ease the burden on trans and non-binary people from their dead name to their affirmed name? And for the benefit of members of our audience who are not familiar with the term dead name means the birth name of a transgender person who has changed their name as part of their gender transition.
You know, it can't be overestimated or overstated how important that is. I myself am not transgendered. I can't speak from my lived experience on this, but certainly we come across this quite often. And you know, naming and your how you identify and the pronouns you want to use are very personal, and they're yours. And of course, they're very political as well. And, you know, we all want to be who we are. And when you erase that, you've erased the very being of who a person is. You know, I think it's hard to describe to people what that must feel like, but, you know, it's as if saying you just don't exist. And so, you know, whether it's sincere or not on the part of the bank, maybe it doesn't really even matter. Maybe they're courting our community, but that to me is progress, that they want us and that they're willing to do that and not create barriers. It's harder in New Hampshire to get your name changed and to get your driver's license have an X on it instead of an M or an F than it is, it sounds like, to go to a bank and deal with your account. So, and that's a pity, right? It should be somewhat easy and it should be available if you want to do it. And, you know, without that, we actually get calls about, you know, they're making it hard for me to do this. And it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. It's a good point. And it seems like a small thing to do for our community, but it's huge to our kids and our adults too.
Hershey Hirschkop, Executive Director of Seacoast Outright, thank you so much for your time and your insights.
Well, thanks, Hugo. You have asked great questions. I look forward to seeing you again.
Absolutely. You're a welcome guest. And thank you all for listening and joining us today on this latest edition of NHLN Opinion Plus. For more information about the discussion, please check out our website, NHLatinonews.com. Follow us on Twitter at NHLatinoNews and Instagram at NH_Latino News. I'm Hugo Balta, owner and publisher of New Hampshire Latino News, part of the Latino News Network. Thank you all for joining us.